The reason why
I'm
boys
going to
and
address the
men
elephant in the
become
room
shooters,
right
part
now.
1.
Every single person wants to blame all these mass shootings on mental health, and of course the liberal media is going to immediately go for gun control because they try to go for the guns anytime they get the chance to. But the reality is, what nobody's talking about, what the liberal media and all these liberal outlets never want to discuss, is why are all the mass shooters boys and men? Okay? Literally says that 98% of perpetrators in school mass shootings are male. And why are they doing it? Well, I'll tell you one reason why they're not doing it. It's not just because, quote, men are just generally more violent, said the group's president, Gillian Peterson, of forensic psychologist and professor of criminology and criminal justice at Hamline University. There are many theories as to why that is. Yeah, boys are just more violent. But why? Why is this woman just telling us that boys are more violent and aggressive? And every single feminist, every single liberal is going to tell you it's because boys and men can't express their emotions. It's because boys can't express themselves because boys don't feel safe to express their emotions. It's another factor of toxic masculinity that boys can't express their emotions and they have to repress these emotions until they well up and they burst out in things like a school shooting or, violent behavior. Well, why is that? It's because boys and men are made out to be the enemy. They're blamed for all of society's problems, and we've been coaching and empowering and raising awareness about girls' issues for decades, for generations. For generations, we've been telling girls to shoot for the moon and to reach for the stars, and you could be anything you want to be, and girl power, and girls go to college to get more knowledge, and boys go to Jupiter to get more stupider. Well, unfortunately, all of these beliefs have been internalized by males. Unfortunately, there's generations that realize that nobody cares about them, okay? And no matter what, the truth is just that they're hurting and they're floundering. They're literally falling behind in so many things, and nobody wants to bat an eye. Nobody is raising awareness about it. Nobody's speaking up about it. Here's just a few of the many things. Data supports the claim that boys are falling behind, and dramatically so. For example, there is a growing gender gap in high school graduation rates. In a 2018 study, about 88% of girls graduated on time compared to 82% of boys. Not that huge of a difference, but there's a lot more than that. For college enrollment, the gender gap is even more striking, with men now trailing women in higher education at record levels. Last year, women made up 60% of college students, while men only accounted for 40%. This article goes on to say the circumstances affecting these outcomes start much earlier in life, during a boy's formative years. A study from 2013, I guess we haven't cared to look into it since 2013, it points that family structure as a driver of boys' behavior, and reported that by 8th grade for children raised by single mothers, the school suspension rate is 25% higher for boys than girls. Fatherless homes. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 18.3 million children, or 1 in 4, live without a biological step or adoptive father in home. So there's a lack of male role models in our schools too. As of 2018, only 24% of all K through 12 teachers were men, according to the National Center for Education Statistics. Only 24%. So 1 in 4, 1/4 of teachers are men in K through 8. So these boys are not only growing up without a father in the home, there's no male role models at all. There's absolutely no teachers that they can go and talk to that really understand them. And we all know that they are usually blamed for the problems. And the problem is, I'm being a little bit fanatical right now, but the majority of teachers lean left. That's statistically true. The majority of people in higher education, in the school system, teachers lean liberal. Well, for many reasons, usually the liberal is the one that wants to obviously support things like higher paying teachers and things like that. But there's comes a certain ideals and values when you have maybe feminist ideals about raising and empowering young girls. Well, you're going to give them more attention than you're teaching the boys. That's just true. It might not be true for every teacher, but the majority of boys are probably not getting the attention that they need compared to their girl peers. And not only that, there's so much more to say. Girls and boys learn differently. There's all kinds of study and research that boys learn through things like play and just more physical. And girls learn just better by sitting still, or, their brains are hardwired differently. And so we're forcing boys to sit still for 8-10 hours a day, however long it is. And in an education system, it doesn't really support the way that they learn. And you guys can say whatever you want to say, but this is intentional, okay? We constantly have ads directed at men and boys for their toxic masculinity and the fact that boys are the problem. And we could go through statistic after statistic that just shows whether boys or men, they're overwhelmingly, if they're not taking out other people, they're taking it out on themselves, okay? More than 38,000 men in the U.S. died by suicide in 2021. So this is showing that it's gone up every single year, year over year. So, again, this is showing that suicide rates are climbing by 4% year over year. The suicide rate for men in the U.S. is about 4 times as high as it was for women in 2021. So roughly 23 suicide deaths for every 100,000 men compared to about 6 for every 100,000 women. So 4 times higher. And there's complete silence about this in the media. No one's putting money towards it. No one's raising money. There's no office of, women's and girls empowerment. There's no office of women's and victims' rights. There's no office of young boys and preventing. There's no money being put to this. But here's some interesting insight from researchers that talks about why. Well, it says fantasies of unlimited power and greatness and intense desire for admiration is how Frank Roberts, director of Institute for Violence Prevention, the sense of damaged masculinity is common for many shooters, which involves failures and inadequacies. And another one talks about white male grievance, although he acknowledges that not all shooters have been white. This says, we teach boys and men that the only socially acceptable emotion to have is to not be vulnerable and sensitive, but to be tough, macho, and aggressive, kind of like I said earlier. This is definitely still true. Boys aren't allowed to show their emotions. When they are allowed to show their emotions, they get mocked and slapped down. Whether we're talking about a middle schooler, high schooler, whether we're talking about Will Smith that opens about his wife and cries and gets memes mocked from him. What about Tyrese, the Fast and the Furious actor, who made that video or picture crying and that turned into a complete meme? Men show emotions and they're immediately mocked and ridiculed by society. And this goes on to say, we're talking about boys who have been emasculated over a period of time. They were bullied or ignored or didn't have the dating life or popularity they wanted. So this talks about a gentleman who has a lisp and stutter who murdered 17 students. But I can relate to this so much. I mean, I worked at a victim services agency, okay, for way too long, for almost 4 years, okay? And the disdain that there was for boys and men was appalling. It wasn't about equal rights for the sexes. It was that boys and men were the problem. This is supposed to be a victim center for all victims, regardless of color, race, creed, age, ethnicity. I mean, the people who ran the show, taking orders from the DOJ down, raising awareness about certain topics, there was no awareness for boys and the issues that they're facing, for the bullying. So we're going to continue to see this in our society until we raise the awareness, until we carry the torch for boys and men that they are floundering. Okay, they're upset, they're mad, they're pissed off because it's a world that doesn't care, that makes them out to be the enemy, and they can't compete with the peers of their age. I mean, girls are by and large blowing them out of the water. We've seen all these statistics. Girls their age have these TikToks and OnlyFans, and they're have millions of followers. These boys feel like they can't compete. They don't even know how to talk to a girl. They get shut down, they get dismissed, and they just feel like they're so out of place. And going to keep happening.